Hey man, can you hear me?
Hey man, can you hear me? Oh yeah, I can hear you. How's it going?
Good. I think everyone can. So yeah, I got like 10 minutes and I gotta go. What's
Okay,
up?
no problem. So I wanted to talk to you about a tweet you put out a while ago. I really wanted to talk to you at the time, but I was super busy because it was like I was just
Sure.
starting up school stuff and I had to like do a bunch of work. But it was about a tweet you
No
made
problem.
specifically about the stand down order that was put in place to check extremism within the military after what happened at the
Mhm.
Capitol. And you basically
Yeah.
said it was racist and was partisan purity testing coming to the military,
Yes.
and why aren't they investigating them for left wing extremism as well? And
Right.
I don't really understand how, number one, it's racist, and I don't understand why they would be investigating the military for left-wing extremism as well.
Well, it's because how it will be in place and the people that talked about embracing things like this, the language that they've used. So, for example, you had Senator, I forget the name of the senator. This tweet was a while ago, but you had a senator that made a claim like this. Well, we have 25,000 National Guard people here at the Capitol, but most of them are white men. And we know that 80% of white men voted for Donald Trump. So we're not sure about their actions. So basically impugning these people because of the color of their skin and because of their political preference. That's how it seems that this will be issued. That they'll probably go about this in a way that John Brennan has suggested, that we go after Trump supporters, white supremacists, nationalists, and
So,
libertarians.
so I
Was
would
how John Brennan put it.
So I would say that from what I saw from the standout order, none of it was talking about looking for somebody who voted for Trump or somebody who carries like Republican Party cards or anything like that and purging them from the military. When they were doing the same thing to check extremists being within the ranks to protect the Capitol during January 20th, that was not done either. Usually what was done from the review that I did was that they would go and see if anybody was like part of like extremely white nationalist Facebook groups or white supremacist groups of that sort,
Okay.
right? And the thing is, I think this is a legitimate threat to our country, right? Because as far as I'm aware, if I check the data that I provided, I think in like another tweet about this, is that military service members, and these are people within the military, right, put white nationalism at the same rate as a threat to our country as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and foreign terrorists, and even more than domestic terrorist Islamic threat, and is actually getting closer every year to Iran, which we can consider one of our most powerful, like one of most strongly like opposing geopolitical enemies. And this is
How do
like
you? Okay.
this is an escalating number too. Like each year, the amount of service members who see white nationalism as a threat continue to increase. It used to be like only like 30% of minority service members saw examples of white supremacy, white nationalism in the military, and now it's half, right? Which is
Well,
a
do you
really
think that there's
scary
any?
number.
Do you think that that's because the number is actually increasing, or because that we have things like critical race theory being taught in militaries now?
Do you think that like the military members are just like, well, I saw somebody say something about how they voted for Bush or Trump or something, and I saw that as an example of white supremacy because I read critical race theory. Because I have never met
Let me
any.
ask you,
Yeah,
like, so let me ask you, like, what do you, if you could put it in your own words in a sentence or two, what do you think the January 6th incident was?
I think the January 6th incident was a culmination of conspiracy peddling, historic example. I would say conspiracy peddling and probably the failure of Reconstruction and some economic stuff that is really complicated, too much complicated for me to get into right now.
Okay, yeah, I don't, I'm not impugning your definition there, but the reason I bring this up is, you know how it's being pressed over and over in the media and by Democrats is a white nationalist uprising,
I mean, there were white
right?
nationalists there, though, weren't there?
Would you call it a? You didn't call it a white nationalist
Well,
uprising.
no, but you just asked my definition on that, but there were white
Right.
nationalists
So
there.
the point I bring up is, though, so we could see. So we're talking about
And we're talking about
investigating
what the
military
media or
people.
Democrats saying. I'm talking about the people who are
No, no,
actually going to
no.
be doing this review. Are they saying like
Right.
Trump supporters are racist? And if you're a Trump supporter, like, is there any evidence of this?
I mean, like we have the people. Most of the time, people are tight-lipped when they're going. Like, didn't Austin, Secretary of Defense Austin, say something like this?
Well,
Talk about white supremacy or something to that
yeah, but
effect.
white supremacy is a huge problem in the military.
Do you think that there's other forms of
Extremism.
extremism that are also?
Yeah, I think like domestic Islamic extremism could be a problem, but it's not nearly the same problem as white nationalism. ISIS, Al Qaeda, foreign terror threats. Of course, I would say that China has become maybe not a threat within the military. I haven't seen any like infiltration there, but they have like tried to like put like spies within like domestic like local politics. There was like that huge thing with the Eric Swalwell story. I think you're probably familiar with. While I don't think Eric Swalwell necessarily did anything wrong, it does show that they are like investing like in intelligence threats. But when it comes to the military, this is something that has been escalating as a threat, and there's been actual incidents of white nationalists trying to cause mass casualty events by sending information about the U.S. military to neo-Nazi groups in the United States. This was something that happened.
I have no problem with rooting out white nationalists. What I have a problem with is that it's clear that we see people that are in civilian leadership against civilian leadership roles, or people that are largely responsible for shaping the narrative of this country, that continue to call almost anything they disagree with white nationalism. At the same time, we're having this sort of purity test. Now, this occurs in the same environment where we saw all sorts of people rioting this year that were seemingly, many of them were spray painting or saying things that were critical of white people and seemed that could be arguably racist against. Sorry, my dog's dog. Jeez, man. Found the water bottles he's chewing up. So it's clear that we only seem to be concerned about extremism when it goes one direction. We have 223 locations of violence that occur in the left wing over the summer. No one says a peep, not a word. We had people try to break into the White House on May 31st. In DC.
I'm not gonna say rioting did not occur. Like there was no like left-wing rioters. I'm not gonna say that. What I am gonna kind of counter here is I have not seen any instances, and I guess if you want, you could say Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning, but I don't think you would say that. Any instance of like left-wing extremists trying to cause like massive terror attacks from within the United States military. I have seen no data to suggest that military personnel, and I'm talking rank and file troops, I'm not talking leadership, this is rank and file troops. So unless you think like large amounts of the military are just like brainwashed, and like half of minority service members who've seen these are like, they're like, well, I believe this because once someone told me that white people are the devil, and like that's why I believe that they're all white supremacists. But this seems to be an escalating problem every year. There's events of mass casualty events being planned by white nationalists in the military, and since 9/11, the biggest domestic terror threat in the United States has been white nationalist terrorism. Right, and I don't think unless you think the military is going to start rioting against the government, which is what you could talk about maybe if you want to talk about left wing like political violence, which it would be weird because the military and the National Guard are usually the thing that steps in the way of the rioters.
I mean, again, when we look at the statistics, so if we go through the FBI studies, for example, the CSI study that people have brought up to me, the Center for Strategic Intelligence study that people have brought up to me over and over, that study, for example, says that there were 53 examples of political violence this year that they cited. 28 of those were right-wing, and the remaining, they couldn't determine a political affiliation. That was from 2020.
Okay. But I'm talking post 9/11 though, and I'm talking specifically within the military, because this is a problem within the military. There's problems without society, and I can have a different discussion about like rioting and whether that's terrorism or whether this is that. But this is planned terror attacks, mass casualty events within the military members seeing more examples, and more military members saying, the majority of minority service members saying, I see white supremacy, white nationalism, and racism within the military. And the military is saying publicly that we have a problem with domestic extremism in the military, and we have real events where people are getting charged with terrorism offenses for planning these events. And I think the military, after seeing that their own members of the military were part of active and no longer active members of the military, were part of the group that charged the Capitol, and combined with all this data, suggests to me that this is a valid thing to do, to investigate this.
Members of the military that were involved in Black Lives Matter protests that resulted in riots.
Is there any example of like BLM terrorism events being planned within the military? I mean, it feels like this is a general.
But you're talking.
I'm sure there was active military members who have been participated in Black Lives Matter protests.
That would be worth.
Well, it would depend.
It would be worth investigating for that extremism.
No, because it's not been shown to be prevalent within the military. Because this is,
that
is
like
one
nonsensical.
Wait. Is there any data suggesting that radical communist or radical Antifa or black nationalist belief systems have dug its way into the military and they're planning terror attacks from within it, because I've seen no evidence to back that up whatsoever.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, a top-down investigation costs money. We can't just like investigate like, I don't know, like Taoist extremism, you know?
We can't investigate all extremism. Just
well,
extremism
no, because no. Well,
the
thing is, it actually, to do a top-down like review and investigation does cost money. Like, for example, if I was to say like extremism is a problem, right, Rob? You would agree? Extremism is a problem. So should we invest in military tomorrow for Taoist extremism? Do a stand down order to investigate it for Taoist extremism? I would say no, because there's been no evidence of Taoist extremism ramming its way into the military. There's been no polling to suggest. There's been no planned attacks.
So let me ask you how this works. So how are they? Give me an idea of how are they going about to investigate whether or not a specific military member has ties to right-wing extremism?
So I remember that what they did,
the sort of things they would do.
They would usually review somebody's conduct, right? Review if they're part. For example, they check if you're part of any groups. Like if you're like, hey, I checked and your name came up in the American Nazi Party. You probably should not be part of this division that's going to be going to Afghanistan, right?
That's cool.
They'll most likely going to be checking Facebook groups where they're part of extremist groups. For example, the Jews Suck 99.2 group, they're probably not going to be pretty cool with you being in that. That's actually about exactly what they did for when they were reviewing the people who went to DC when they did an extremism review for that, because they were concerned that people who maybe supported what happened on January 6th could be a part of that. So if somebody's like basically calling for like all the part of these groups or part of these white nationalist organizations, I don't see any reason why that would be bad. I guess your counter would be, well, they should also do that for the Black Lives Matter, but I would just counter with, I haven't seen evidence of that being a problem within the military.
But you're not talking about, right? You're talking about knowing. So for example, why wouldn't they do the same with the Nation of Islam? If they're already doing background checks, if I saw, oh, this guy's a member of this group that we think's a right-wing extremist group, yeah, we're going to flag that.
Most likely,
now, this person's a member, is posted on the Nation of Islam. We're going to skip over that.
I feel like they might actually already do that, but when it comes specific,
exactly.
Well,
so what's the new
because obviously. If they are already doing that, but there's still a problem of white nationalism in the military, they probably aren't doing enough to make sure that that's the case by checking people's online conduct, by checking what groups people are part of, membership roles, different things like that. For example, there were two people, now they weren't sentenced for anything, but there were two people who were denied going to the Capitol because they had to review them further. That doesn't prove they were white nationalists, but it showed that when they did extra filtering, they were like, this is suspicious conduct. Let's take another look at it.
The question is, if you're going to do that extra filtering for everyone anyways, then if you saw that other potential extremist groups came up that weren't left-wing, for example, domestic gangs, right? There's a big problem with military members that leave service and then end up in domestic gangs.
Sure,
like
and you know what? If domestic gangs become 47.6% ranked as a top domestic national security threat, or a national security threat period, then I think putting resources into doing that would make sense. And I do generally think it's probably, gang members should not probably be like prevalent in the military if you're part of a gang, but it seems that the biggest priority should be dealing with our largest national security threats, right? And I think if somebody supports the Eritrean dictatorship, and they like want to do stuff in support of them, they probably should not be within the military, but I would say that's not a really high-level security threat, so we should deal with the things that are higher on the list, which, if you look at this list, it's China, cyber terrorism, Iran, then ISIS on the same level as white nationalism. We have those on the same level.
Because they're full of shit. They're full of shit. That's
the military. Wait, this is members. Yes. The members of the military are full of shit.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Okay, members of the military are full of shit.
To go after. Right, the people at the positions at the top that are
no. This is rank and file. This is rank and file. This is what I'm telling you.
For example, this is we can see when we push critical race theory in the corporations, we also see that more people think racism is a problem.
But is there any
businesses as well?
But you say that, but then I'm giving you examples of this is from, and by the way, this is from the Justice Department, and this happened under Trump, so this is Trump's Justice Department talking about how a U.S. Army private Ethan Meltzer sent sensitive U.S. military information to members of a neo-Nazi group in an attempt to facilitate a mass casualty attack on Meltzer's army unit. This is a real thing that is occurring within the U.S. military. They're trying to
I'm
kill
sure, like,
members of the military.
But again, like those instances from the tens of thousands, I assume probably hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people in the military. How many of those incidents are there? And if we're going to look,
Is there any instances of this happening for BLM?
But listen, the truth is this: you've already said, well, they're already checking for Nation of Islam and stuff like that. The truth is, we know that the way this will be applied isn't the way that you're suggesting. So how
do we know that?
Okay, so you're saying they're already checking. They've already checked in the past to scrutinize.
They've probably done a very surface level like examination.
Okay, so then who are they going to now further examine? How do they choose who they're going to examine further?
They're doing a top-down review, from as far as I could tell.
So every military.
That's why they had to do a stand down order to do it.
Okay.
If this was just a normal review, then it would not really be that much of like a newsworthy story. But they ordered a stand down order to do it, suggesting that they can consider this a rising national security threat, which BLM just doesn't meet the classifications of.
But listen, so they're going to your understanding. Obviously, you don't know the specifics. I'm not going to hold you to that. But your understanding is that they will investigate everyone. Everyone in the military is now going to be.
I'd have to read it. I'd have to review it again. But as far as I could tell, they were doing I can read it again, but that would take too much time, and you got to go soon. But as far as I'm aware, they're doing. It's a stand down order to a top down review. I don't know if they're going to.
So let me just ask you. Yeah? So just a couple of questions. If they decide to more heavily scrutinize someone based on their political affiliation, like if they're if they see a bunch of Trump things, or they see them questioning the results of the election, do you think that warrants more scrutiny?
I don't think somebody supporting a political candidate, as long as it's literally not, I want to kill all the minority groups 92, right? I don't think somebody supporting a political candidate is grounds for them to be kicked out of the military, or them like, so let's investigate what this person ate for dinner and let's go spy on them or anything. Good. But I do believe them having ties to neo-Nazi groups like this guy did, Ethan Meltzer, is stuff that needs to be reviewed more, because this I will support this thing you're proposing once somebody this shows me to be a legitimate threat within the United States military. If it's not, then why waste the time?
I mean, but it's not wasting time if you're already.
It would just be political. It would just be political grandstanding.
Just real quick, I just want to say real quick. So one, I'm glad we agreed. So if it does turn out that we find that there was more heavy scrutiny being put on people based on political affiliation, I'm glad that we both.
It depends on what we mean by political affiliation, because political affiliation covers a lot of ground. Like if somebody, for example, if somebody denied that the election was, let's just say somebody says the election was fraudulent, that for me could be grounds for further examining them, because that is somebody rejecting the foundation of our democracy. Right.
Okay. So if in 2016 someone was tweeting out that they thought Russia hacked our election, you would
if somebody was like, this election was fraudulent because Russia stole it. Yeah, I would actually probably be fine with that. But that's different. That's different. But let me be clear. That would be different than somebody saying, I think Russia interfered with our election, which is 100% proven that they did by spreading disinformation. That would be different. I just want to clarify that.
But we're already to the position where you're saying that we should have sort of a purity test where people's First Amendment right, they could question the election.
No, 100%. Because if somebody went in there and it was like, hello, I want to join the military, and I also hate Jewish people. I despise them. Anytime I look at one, it fills me with rage. Well, no, that's First Amendment though. You're allowed. If I wanted to go on the public street and say that,
no. But that's different, right? That's different than saying I don't trust our system. I think that this system was screwed up in this. It's just there's clearly a difference to saying I hate people for their race versus I don't trust that the system. Like we've had people for years and years say they don't trust the system for various reasons.
Well, the thing is, people can say, like, I have problems with the system. But for somebody to reject the democracy itself, say it was fraudulent, it was stolen, there's a difference between somebody saying, like, man, I really think that, like, voter suppression is a real issue. Or I think that, I think there is voter fraud, and that's bad. I think those two things are different than this election was stolen. This was a fraudulent election. And you know what? Somebody needs to stand up and do something. That's totally, I think that's all different now.
Just real quick. On this point, so just two things real quick. So if there's another Stacey Abrams type situation and someone, you yourself are like, I think that, gerrymandering and voter suppression changed the results of this election. I think that if there wasn't for this fraud that Stacey Abrams would have won, you would be saying that you would expect if you ever work for the federal government, or in this case, particularly the military, that you should be under more scrutiny for those statements.
Wait. Okay. Somebody saying that voter suppression affected the outcome of an election is totally different than saying an election is illegitimate or it was stolen. Because a lot of factors can affect the outcome of an election.
Right, but you don't think that Stacey Abrams and the people supporting her were saying that the result of that was illegitimate?
Well, if I don't know if she was saying, I would have to go back and check it. That election was
she definitely was.
Was she? I'd have to go back and check.
I mean, and I support her right and others to say that. Like, that's what I'm saying. We get to this dangerous slippery slope when we start to say, well, people aren't allowed to question authority, or else there's some sort of scrutiny.
The thing is, I support scrutiny to the government, but when the scrutiny is, I'm problem with them controlling the banks, or scrutiny like that, I don't want those people being given guns.
But that's different than what we're talking about. Like, for example, let's say that Donald Trump would have won. And then all of a sudden there was credible information that came out that he was ordering people at the USPS to destroy ballots that shouldn't have been destroyed. Right? And you were like, this is ridiculous. He only won some of these states by like 10, 20,000. This is ridiculous. This was a fraudulent election. He committed a crime.
Fraudulent election. Okay, see, that's something. Look, the thing is, and I'm not even saying these people get kicked out. I'm just saying they get examined further to make sure these people aren't like literally.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous. And I think that you are a person that I don't think is a radical whatsoever. I think that you would make a statement like that, and I'd be like, that's a statement that I don't see as incitement or anything like that. That's someone legitimately.
And the thing is, we are just.
And I'm afraid, just real quick, I'm afraid that in the future, if some situation occurs, then someone that means well, like you or me, that would criticize what we see as a potentially fraudulent situation would now face increased scrutiny for having that opinion. It's almost like, well, we now have to be careful when we're questioning the powerful, when we're questioning the system whatsoever. Why would it stop here?
Do we have any evidence that this is going to be and I'm talking not like a public, like a senator said this one time, or this official said this. I'm talking like, this is the plan we're going to be doing. Is there any evidence of them saying we're going to be reviewing people for supporting Trump, or people who we're going to review people for thinking that voter suppression is an issue, or somebody thinking that fraud is an issue? My thing is when they start undercutting and saying things like this election was stolen, that is in conspiracy theory territory. That's the same thing in my mind. Somebody saying that is in the same grounds as somebody saying 9/11 was done in the government. It is the same complete conspiratorial nonsense.
I would say those are similar.
I think that people pushing that type of stuff should not probably be in the military.
I disagree. But let me. It's fine. I disagree. I think you should be allowed to say that stuff, and that it will be
what's the difference? But you said there's a difference. What's the difference between somebody saying 9/11 was an inside job, this election was stolen and it's fraudulent and everything else, and somebody saying, I think the Jews control the government? What's the thing that makes it so that last one is so bad that it can't, that's the one that can be banned, but the rest of them can't?
No, that they would necessarily be banned for that, but it's different because it suggests that there's something about race. It suggests that there's something about race.
Why is it about the race? Because the thing is, people can be extremists and not base their extremism primarily on race and still do terrorism. Sure. A great example would be, what's his name? The person who did the bombings that the big one from the like 80s or 90s post Vietnam. Sorry, his name is with a V. Somebody in chat will tell me in a second once chat gets updated.
I have no clue.
He's the dude. Timothy McVeigh.
Oh yeah, McVeigh. Yeah.
Like his like extreme anti-government extremism. He probably shouldn't have been. Let's say he probably is not somebody. If he like made public statements online saying the nonsense that he believed, that should be within the military. That's the type of extremism. Giving that person military training and access to firearms and guns is not smart for our national security.
Why would I then want someone that talks about how this country is founded on racist and it's systemically racist, and that the system, the institutions are all racist?
Well, is there examples of this? Is there examples of this really affecting our national security?
Is it something we're looking for?
I mean, I guess, but it hasn't shown up. I mean, like why would I? It's like investigating. It's investigating a crime.
Someone said. So I don't get this. So you're saying like, well, just because that we have some examples of people that have engaged in one type of thing, we should only. So if someone came out, for example, and said, "I hate Hispanics," If a black person came out and said, F Hispanics, I think Hispanics are ruining this country, you don't have a problem with that, because there's not an example of a lot of people with that mentality.
If they came out and say
damage.
stuff like that, I don't think we should give them firearms, because of what if they start.
But that's what I'm saying. So if you have people.
Wait. That people can. This is not only just white nationalists. This is a lot of it is just general extremism, and I think that would probably be covered by this. But if we're looking at this isn't just a few examples. This is polling data. This is a government. This is military statements from high-ranking officials. This is mass casualty. This is like data from past 9/11 that white nationalism and white supremacy and far-right extremism has been a massive problem of national security, and to the point where it has increased to the same level when you ask rank and file, active duty people who are currently in the military. I'm not talking generals. They're saying it's on the same level as ISIS.
We can talk. We can talk a lot.
Let me say my last thing. There's one last thing.
I have one more thing I want to ask.
Okay, you ask me, then I'll say one last thing.
Okay. So we already got to the point. You say they're already checking everyone for a base level of radicalism, right? And then you say, but now you don't. I think I've got you to agree. They're not just going to willy-nilly check people based on superficial characteristics, such as, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat, or are you white or are you black? They're not going to do that, right?
And unless they're like going for like CIA clearance, where they do like fucking excuse my language, they do like personality tests. Unless they're going to that level, because I know like NSA officials now have to do like tests like that. But that as far as I know, that's not what they're doing.
Okay, but so if they're just going to test everyone's what you're saying. They're not, like, they basically are going to give a higher level of scrutiny to everyone. They're not going to say, we need to scrutinize this person more based on just base level facts like their skin color, their religion, their political affiliation.
I mean, I guess it would, like, for example, there might be a case where it's like, okay, so we're checking, okay, we've done the far right and the anti-government extremism. Let's do the white extremism. Let's start with the white people. I think that would make sense.
Would you consider that? That's racist.
If somebody's checking for white supremacy and they check the white people first, you think that's racist?
That's racism. That's racism. The fact that we're doing increased scrutiny of people based on their skin color is racism. That's exactly my fear of how this will go, and that's exactly what my tweet was about.
Okay, so do you believe that if I was checking, let's say I put you in a room, Rob, right? And oh fuck, this isn't my last question, but I just want to do this. And there was 100 people in this room, and one of them was a white nationalist with a bomb strapped to their chest, right? Mm-hmm. Bad situation. But they said that if you don't pick me as the white nationalist, then as the white supremacist, like they said this over the audio of the fucking something typed to the wall, if you don't pick me first, then I'm gonna blow up everybody here. And there you see, I have a bunch of people in the room, and there's 20 white people in this room, 100 people. Do you not think putting those 20 white people to the side for the goal of white supremacy and checking them for white supremacist extremism would make sense, considering the subject matter?
That's different, because you're talking about profiling a specific suspect as opposed, so there's a specific suspect for a specific crime. That's different. What you've just given, real quick, what you've just given is the rationale for racial profiling of police against black people. Black people in this country commit far more violent crime than white supremacists. I believe the numbers are something like, since 9/11, white supremacists are responsible for about 354 deaths, I believe is the number. The amount of homicides that occur from black perpetrators is something into like the 7,000 to 9,000 range. So you would be okay with police saying, we're going to first investigate black people on the suspicion that they could be committing violent crime.
Well, no. I don't think that's the same, because you can be any race and be a gang member. It's hard to be any race and be a neo-Nazi white supremacist.
I mean, you're really stretching here. You're really stretching. We know that this specific group of people are committing this specific groups of crimes. Therefore, they should be targeted. Okay, for the race.
So can you point me to the black? Can you point me to the black white supremacist who committed a terror attack?
But it has not. Why are we focused on white supremacists?
Well,
we're talking about now police.
I don't want to keep you.
Real quick. So you're saying in the context of the military, they're focused on white supremacists. Fine.
That's one of the things they're looking at.
Of policing, they're not concerned.
And we're just assuming that's what they're doing. They could actually be checking everyone for white supremacy. They could be walking up to the black people and saying, so you're part of any neo-Nazi groups? No, I would like to live. I mean, that's possible.
I don't understand. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying if you say in the context of military investigators that are making sure people in the military aren't involved with the group that you think is most likely to commit serious amounts of violence, therefore we could scrutinize white people for the color of their skin because those groups happen to be predominantly white people. The police in
Well, no,
like cities,
they are white
just real
people.
quick, the
It
police in
is
the cities are
defined
doing a
by being
different
whiteness.
jurisdiction. What's that?
It's defined, being a white supremacist it's defined by whiteness. Like, you can't
But it doesn't.
separate that.
That's not true. You could be a person of color and theoretically be involved in white supremacist gangs. You could. It would be rare, but it's irrelevant to the question.
I mean,
of the
you know what?
rationale
That
you're
is true.
given is that, what's that?
You know what? You know, it is true. There have been examples. There were Jews that supported Hitler. That was a thing.
Right.
They were at the end of the day they were killed, but yeah.
Right. The danger, what I'm saying is that you've given them the rationale that says, based on skin color, you're more likely to be in this group that commits violence.
That's true.
Therefore, we will heavily scrutinize you first.
When it comes to
then the police would do the same thing. Just let me finish the point. I've been trying to finish the point. The police would then take that same rationale and say, okay, for us, we're looking at our community, and in our community, the most likely perpetrators of crime are young black men. So we're going to start scrutinizing young black men because we're afraid that they will commit violent crimes. Not because there was a crime that committed and we're investigating them, but pre-crime. We're going to make sure that they're not radical and that they will commit this violent crime that's a scourge in our community. That would be incredibly racist. Everyone would be up in arms. That's worse than like broken window policing.
The difference,
because you're saying that's stop and frisk on steroids.
The difference would be that you don't. Okay, you can be a white person and a member of a gang, right? The Bloods and Crips don't keep black people out as part of like membership, as far as I'm aware. Right?
Right, but it's still.
But white nationalist groups, their primary goal is the extermination, in many cases, of minority groups to create a white ethno-state in the United States of America, to return us to a time where the Klan ruled and black people are nothing but a distant memory. Right? That's that goal. Not a lot of black people are going to sign up to that goal, and I think that it's kind of like part of the fundamental ideology. So I don't know, but this is not even my...
Let's do a direct an apples to apples comparison.
And let me be clear. If honestly, if somebody came to me with this complaint, I would be fine. Let's investigate the black people for white supremacy. I'd be fine with that. We don't even know the military isn't going to do that. They probably are just going to run the names through a list.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second, but just for an apples-to-apples comparison, would you have said after 9/11, like let's say 2003, right? We'll go back there. Okay. Do you think that everyone of a Muslim origin should have been set aside for increased scrutiny?
For increased scrutiny? No.
How is this any different? It's clear that the biggest threat to our country at that point was Islamic terrorism. So why would it be different that the military should have been making sure that Islamic terrorism wasn't within the ranks?
Okay, so if the investigation, now again, like I just said, I would not have a problem with us just checking everybody, period. But when it comes to members of a faith being part of a group, I will say right now, to be a Islamic extremist, you probably have to be a Muslim. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
Okay, so if they're investigating Islamic extremists, it does make sense to investigate people who are part of that faith. Now, that is much different than what actually happened with like investigating people in New York. But yeah, I don't why do you...
It was bad. It was bad. That's exactly the type of thing we're talking. Just because you're white and you have to, we say, here's a bad organization. And part of the criteria for being in that organization, basically, we'll just say for the sake of argument, because it would be extremely rare to be a white supremacist. So we'll just say for the sake of argument, to be in this group, you have to be white. That doesn't mean that you could say, therefore, we will investigate all white people. Just like if you say to be an Islamic extremist, you have to be Islamic, therefore we'll investigate all Muslims. It's equally bad. It's equally bad.
Okay, I didn't say investigate all Muslims, okay? I don't like putting, let's not put those words in my mouth. I said specifically.
Well, no, I'm not saying you said that. You said you were against it. I'm saying that it would be this.
If we are filtering people from going into the military, and this we 100% already do. If we're filtering people into the military and trying to make sure that none of them are Islamic extremists, if someone says, what is your faith? Muslim. And then be like, okay, and if they're doing a top-down review for extremism, running that name through a list, why would I have a problem with that?
You said you did. So you tell me, why'd you initially say you did have a problem?
What?
Would it be simple? Would it be simple and quick to run through the list real quick? It wouldn't be that invasive to them?
I mean, it depends. It depends on the investigation. Okay, look, this is all okay. 'Cause this is all contrary to what I'm even trying to get to here. Can I get to my big point, because you said you had to go, and I don't want
Yeah,
to piss
and
you off
I
about
just
you.
have one quick point.
Well, you said that 10 minutes ago.
Well, but no, because I was shocked by the answer you said. That's why. Because the point I
Okay.
was going to make is this: if we say, I'll just make it real quick. If we say that basically they already go through a base level of investigation, and they're not going to single people out based on their skin color, so they won't say, "Oh, we're going to investigate Jim more heavily because he's white than Bill over there because he's black." They would just say, "No, no, no, we won't do that. We'll equally investigate everyone." Why not flag if another extremist group showed up
You know
that
what?
wasn't white
I would
supremacist?
say, you know what, Rob? I would say that it is good probably to run everyone's name of the list, just to be sure. I would say that. Okay,
Okay,
can I get to my
that's
point?
at least
Can I get to my
yes.
point now?
Okay,
Okay, sure. Just to get through that. So let's say you are President Rob. President Rob Noerr. You ran on an anti-establishment campaign. You are president. Congratulations, Mr. President. We have a list of threats here, right? And let's say there's a list of threats, and I'm saying there's two threats that have been proposed here. One of these is threat A, and threat A seems that members of the military are at higher rates saying that this is a threat. And there are examples of members of our military trying to be part of this organization, this part of this disgusting ideology, and commit attacks and undermine our national security. And post this date of recent history, the vast majority of attacks on our nation domestically have been by this ideology. And on the other side, there's no evidence of it being within our military at a high rate. There's no evidence of examples of this other ideology, ideology B, causing anybody or any groups part of it to commit terror attacks from within the military, trying to undermine the military. And post this date that we're talking about, they have not been anywhere near the other level. We have national security threats, and we're going to execute a stand-down order. What's the most important one to choose here? What's more important that we should be like concentrating our time on? And wouldn't talking about option B on the same level as option A be nothing more than political grandstanding?
Okay, if I give me a chance to answer, because I'll give you a straightforward answer. The answer is clearly that. Now, if we're assuming that the evidence is right, I have questions.
You mean clearly option A,
room,
right? Option A, though, right?
I would clearly be option A. Clearly.
Okay.
Now, let me say a couple of caveats to it. However, I would not racially profile in the attempt to investigate that. And the question I have is, I don't understand what the process is. If the process is literally just, we're going to scan because we're not racially profiling, we're going to scan every person's social media and any red flags that come up. How much more difficulty would it be to just put a red flag up for all extremist groups as opposed to just the white nationalist extremist groups? That's the question I have. It seems like, I mean, even you started to get there with the example of Islam. You were like, look, I guess it would basically no skin off the back. Like, we'll ask you if you're Islamic. We'll do a quick rundown to make sure you don't have extremism. Well, that wasn't super invasive. So I don't understand if we're already going to be parsing through people's evidence.
My problem is, I think if they're doing a 60-day service-wide stand-down order, which isn't just like boop boop. I'm assuming they're trying to do everything possible to concentrate on the specific thing, because the specific thing has become an issue of extreme importance. And if they're concentrating on the specific thing, trying to add, well, let's talk about this thing, and add this thing, and add this group, and you know what? Just to be sure, let's add the Buddhist extremists. I mean, who knows? There might be a Buddhist extremist or two in there. What you're doing is muddying the waters when you should be concentrating all resources with dealing with this one thing that has become the biggest national security threat.
Okay, and I'll just say that, like, my fear is, and I'm shocked, kind of, that you said it, that this will basically be used as an excuse for profiling, particularly racial profiling, which is unforgivable. I mean, racial profiling to the likes of which we've almost never seen,
and
except
is there any evidence
after 9/11 with Muslims.
I mean, is there any evidence of this?
I mean, you literally said that. I said
I don't care, right? I'm asking if the military has said they're going to do that.
I don't know. I have not heard them. I'll be honest. I have not heard them. But what I
heard,
just real quick, I heard senators talk about this. I heard a senator specifically say they need to scrutinize National Guard people because they are white, and white people were more likely to vote for Trump. Now, does that mean that that's exactly what those generals were going to do? I know it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it shows that it's problematic
Yeah,
and
but
that
if
something like this could
okay.
happen. And if even someone like you believes that, well, this would be acceptable, that can you start to see, well, I don't think you're an extremist at all. And so when someone like you, through the name of this fear of white supremacy that's being blown up so huge, like in the name of fighting it, that someone like you could be convinced, well, it's okay to racially profile all white people in the military based on this, then maybe, even though I don't have proof of it yet, maybe someone in the military would say, yeah, we're going to do that. And the people that you would think would
Look,
fight back the most against racial profiling,
look,
someone
okay,
like
okay.
you, are going to be like, yeah, I'm all on board.
Okay, so
That scares the shit out of
let's not okay, let's say I said I wouldn't majorly care, right? Now, I do think the best court, if we could, we just cover everybody, just to avoid the whole thing altogether, right? But I said I don't care if they're the first names we put on the list. But let's be clear that that's not my primary objective here. My primary objective is just to do a top down of the entire military, and doing that first is fine by me. But
and let me be clear. I have no love for white supremacy. Like, if I think that if it's found out that you're in a white supremacist organization, like, and one that we could all obviously agree was white supremacist, like you're a neo-Nazi, you're in the KKK, yeah, you have no business in the military. My fear is that that definition will be expanded, as we see politics doing that all the time. They're calling
Wait,
it
I
a white supremacist.
I never got to respond to your thing about the senator, though. So if I point to, like, say, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying something out there, which I'm sure I could find a few examples of, and I know you would agree with me, because nobody respectable thinks she's, like, on her rocker, right?
Right.
Would I be able to say, well, I saw this woman saying this thing about what we should do, therefore I'm scared that the military is going to do this, or I'm scared that this institution, which has not declared any stance on that, on what you're talking about, whether they're going to do it that way, I'm scared because of this person who's unrelated said this, I think they're going to do it.
Okay, I think that I would. Like, for example, think of it this way. Think of it if MTG said that and Trump had won the election, right? So think if MTG came out and said, I'm skeptical of Jewish people. They have these, by the way, I don't think she said Jewish lasers. I think she said, like,
She
George
said
Soros
she would basically, it was the Rothschild tied laser. Basically,
yeah, well, that doesn't mean Jewish.
Well, I mean, the
I'm
Rothschilds are
this.
tied up in a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
Look, it's a crazy thing to say, anyways. But listen, let me say, I even defended Ilhan Omar when she said it was all about the Benjamins, and people like Ben Shapiro were like, "This is anti-Semitic." I don't think so. I think she was just saying AIPAC's a bad lobbying group. It doesn't matter that they're Jewish. That's how. So regardless of what you think, I've been consistent on this. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is, had Trump won, and MTG said there are the Jews are trying to infiltrate our, there's these radical Jewish groups like George Soros is leading them, and they're trying to infiltrate our military. And then Trump's head military advisor, he just appointed new, when it came out and said, yeah, actually, we're going to investigate radical Jewish groups in the military because we have found a couple instances of where they were going to do something. I think you would raise an eyebrow and be like, "Holy shit! Are they listening to MTG? Are they going to like?"
The thing is, I you know what? I would say that, but can I say what's different here? The difference here is there's no example of, like, Jewish extremism becoming, like, a problem in the military. I've never heard of any Jewish extremist attack of, like, we must do this in the name of Judaism and, like, doing anything within the military. I've seen no increase of any polling data. I've seen no statements from military officials saying that is a problem. I have a swath of evidence that white nationalism and white supremacy is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger issue within the military. And I think since it's become an issue, politicians, usually when issues come up, they respond, right? Like, if healthcare is an issue, a politician will come up and give their take. Like, I think we actually need to get rid of the state border thing when it comes to healthcare. Well, I think we need to do a Medicare for all. Well, I think in a public option, they'll all say their little thing, right? And I think one person, part of one party, saying one thing is not evidence that a separate institution that they have no direct control over is going to do that in response. And I think it's jumping the gun.
I'm not saying that it's necessarily evidence, but it's worrisome that it could be the case. So I guess a better example would be this. It's difficult to look at in the military, but let's say that we're just talking about a city. So let's say you got this crazy right-winger in Chicago that's an alderman, and they're like, I don't trust, a Republican just won office, and I don't trust a bunch of these people around because we know that black gangs are the source of the most violence in this community, and there's a lot of black police officers there. And then simultaneously, the person that's in the same party that now has the authority to say so says, we're going to investigate for radical black gangs in our police.
Can I clarify something? So your worrisome is that the military is going to discriminate and, like, persecute like white people within the military by like
Well, not just
like
that.
New
That's a
York
big.
doing like what New York did to like Muslim people with monitoring them in that manner. Is that what you're?
I mean, I do think that a lot of the Islamic profiling was disgusting.
Yeah.
That's part of it. But the other part is that they'll branch out what white supremacy means, like we've seen done in politics over and over again.
Well, I mean, so you think that eventually the military will like say that like support for Trump was white supremacy, or support for the Republican?
It might not go that far, but it could be support for groups that you might consider crazy, but they're not white supremacists.
Do you not think how that would be literally impossible though? I mean, let's talk about the military and what it's made up of. The military has major recruitment problems and has been having major recruitment problems for a long time. We are not a nation like Israel, which basically has instant conscription once you turn a certain age, or you have to do certain service. We have an amazing thing where we actually don't have to do that, and I think that's super cool. We do have to sign up for the draft, but that hasn't been used since forever. And the military has tried a lot of ways. You can even see it through our own platform with U.S. Army Esports, with trying to get people to be interested for joining the military. And one of the biggest groups that have joined the military is Southerners. Southerners overrepresent the military in a large way. And also, economically downtrodden Southerners are one of the biggest section of the military. They are the big boys when it comes to the military. It's also a section which has a lot of support for Trump in that part of the country. For them to expand it to the point where supporting Trump is white supremacy, they would have to cut up such large sections of the military out or kick them out of the military that would make the military unsustainable. And I think it just wouldn't make sense from a strategic or sustainable point of view for them to even do that. Period.
But clearly, but that's not what I said, right? Like I said that I'm not saying that they would go that far, but that there would be organizations that weren't anywhere connected to white supremacists that they would start to associate with.
Rob, I'm gonna do you a solid. Your wife's gonna kill you if you talk to me any longer.
Yeah, I gotta go. I do. So, but we can have this conversation another time. I'd appreciate it. But I hope you're doing well. I hope your audience is doing well. Thank you so much for talking with me.
No problem.